Waffle. There's nobody watching now, so I might just get a few seconds. Like the chat thing at the side. It says past broadcasts. Surely mine's a subscriber. There we go. Right, okay. I wonder if we can minimise this chat on this side. Hide chat there. There we go. That's really weird, eh? There's two of me.
One's enough.
Might just start this. See if people join, but doesn't look like anybody's joining yet. Nobody cares. Anyway, there we go. Look up on the big screen. There we go. Look at that artwork. That's fantastic artwork. Obviously, Yvonne done this one. No, like I done it myself because I'm guff, and I can't draw for shit. But I mean, I think that pretty much sums up 2020 so far. Like just the absolute kind of guffness of this. But yeah, feel free to disagree or agree. I've got the chat up on the screen. I can see I've got a couple of viewers, but I don't know if I'm one of them because I'm not like up my own arse. But yeah. So 2020, good year, eh? Well, I quite enjoyed it. I don't know if you guys enjoyed it as well. It was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I'm just going to just end the video there. But no, it's obviously not been good at all. And I'm not going to kind of waffle on too much. Like, I'm going to waffle. This is called Mark's Geek Waffle. I might as well waffle like a little bit. But I'm going to have to kind of mute me in the background because there's apparently, like, there we go. That's just, like, disconcerting. Right. As I say, I've actually got myself up in the background so I can see the chat. So if anybody does actually kind of, like, jump in the chat and stuff like that, I should hopefully be able to kind of see that. If no, let's see. Show chat. Aye, nobody's in the chat just yet. Right, okay. I'm just gonna crack on. And try and not say M so much, because that's my nice wee verbal tick. So I figured I done a little bit of creative kind of stuff back in October. I done the 31 Days of Horror, which I very much enjoyed doing. So I figured that I'm gonna do this for something today and also for an alternative, because there's going to be a lot of people that wouldn't have been able to kind of go out to parties and like chill and what have you. So this is an alternative to actually getting yourself smashed. You can watch me kind of die on my arse here instead. You won't even need alcohol, you know, it'll probably depress you enough without it. So yeah, what I'm going to do, M is the first letter of my name, Jesus. I'm going to do a review of all the kind of pop culture things I managed to watch this year, or play this year, or read this year. Hopefully I can actually gonna get up to midnight. God's sake, I really wish I'd stopped saying M, but it's happening. If you're playing a drinking game where every time I say M, you're taking a shot, please don't, because I don't want to be responsible for anybody that actually kind of drinks himself to death tonight, because that would be really kind of harsh. If you are in the chat, please say hello. Ask me questions as it goes on as well. I'll attempt to kind of answer. As I say, I can only see a couple of viewers at the moment, so I don't know who is actually there, if anybody, or if it's just me watching myself, which again is really kind of weird. So introduction wise, so as it says, 2020 has not exactly been the best year, but to be fair, I could say that till the cows come home. That's not exactly news to anybody. What is news is the fact that I had to actually kind of listen to the news this year. I was really kind of annoyed with how much I end up kind of having to kind of see the news. Usually I'm an ignorance is bliss kind of guy, and I like starting the day reading the news because it's guff and it depresses me a lot. So I decided I decided a long time ago that I wouldn't actually kind of like start the day with news. I would kind of, I know about the important kind of stories, but for the most part, I decided, nah, no happening. I'm not going to depress myself. But it was so annoyingly hard to avoid this year. There was absolutely no way to avoid the news because it was in everybody's face. We were stuck with, no surprise to anybody, a global pandemic which raged for the entire year. Mainly because there was like stupidity involved, like a lot of people doing shit that they weren't supposed to do, even though they were told not to do it and what have you, and lockdowns kind of fully kind of adhering because people were like just either ignoring it or the politicians had no idea what they were talking about. Didn't want to make this too political, but it's been an absolute kind of farce a year in terms of that kind of stuff. This is something that shouldn't have kind of got to the point that it did, but it did, so that's a bit shit. Speaking of kind of politics again, and again, I never ever kind of engage in the news at all. I don't, but it was hard to avoid the stuff overseas in the States this year as well because it was bloody rampant, and for the last kind of 2 months, I've heard nothing but, I'm not going to say his name, like, because we all know who I'm talking about, so there's no point in me actually giving the man any credit whatsoever, because he doesn't even remotely deserve it. But yeah, this isn't going to be a political rant, as I say, I just figured I'd add it as part of my introduction. So there was that shit going on, like, so basically, and then there was the wildfires, and just, like, this year was honestly almost apocalyptic. Like, 2016 was shit, but looking back on it, I think 2016 was one of these shit years because there was a lot of kind of celebrities that kind of passed away, and not to say that there hasn't been people that's passed away this year. Obviously there has been because of the bloody nameless kind of virus. But yeah, absolute garbage. And to top all that off as well, ended up in a wee bit of a medical issue myself, whereby I ended up with a kind of blood clot in my leg, near the top of my leg, which was insanely scary. So like, I had to kind of deal with that as well. Having to kind of go into the hospital, didn't want to kind of be there that night and what have you. But again, it's a byproduct to everything that's kind of happened because I've been kind of working from home so much. I've kind of spent pretty much the last 8 months on the couch, so it's another kind of like shit show. But anyway, there was some kind of light somewhere. Support of friends, family, what have you. They were there for me. The occasional time I actually did get to go and see something at the cinema, whether or no it was at the start of the year when everything was fine, or when it was a bit later in the year where I was like masked up and what have you. So yeah, so I'm going to get into something a bit more positive. I'm not, like, as I say, I figured I'd do a little bit of an intro, just to kind of like set some of the scene kind of thing. So what I'll do is I'll do a roundup of some of the films. Kind of like, I've actually got some notes, so I don't kind of waffle too much. Although again, it's kind of par for the course. This is called Mark's Geek Waffle. Subtitle Get Fucked 2020. Well, I was very kind of articulate when it came to that. So I'll talk about films. I've got a wee bit kind of in terms of TV, computer games, which I kind of played way more this year than anybody else, but than I ever have done before, is what I meant to say. But again, I think that's the same for everybody. Like, if you haven't been a gamer, then you probably got yourself a bloody console and started gaming. So a couple of wee bits and bobs on kind of gaming as well. Or at least that'll be my intention. And I've even kind of got a wee bit about comics. So I'll talk a wee bit about comics as well. So what I'll do first is I'll have a wee chat about my top kind of 5 films of the year. Did I put down 5? Because this only kind of has 4 at one kind of point, but I think I've probably got 5. So yeah, so starting with 5. Did I put down 5? This is really annoying. You know what? For 5, I'm going to put down Soul, because it doesn't look like on my notes that I've written down a 5 down here. I wrote a 5 up here, but then I kind of rejiggered everything. So yeah, I'm going to say Soul is my top, my 5th top film of the year, only because it kind of snuck in at the end. And it was a Disney Pixar film. So the first thing I'm going to say straight away is I was incredibly sad I never managed to see this in the cinema. It was quite gutting because since Toy Story 2, I think. I have seen every single Pixar film in the cinema. And I think at one point I did end up going back and seeing Toy Story 1. I think the only one at this point I haven't seen is Bug's Life. Or the subsequent Cars films, so Cars 2 and 3, but that's because the first one was a piece of shit. Yvonne would probably disagree with me on that one, but I just thought it was like aimed too much at children, but that's neither here nor there. Talk a bit about Soul. So the first thing I would say about Soul is I got loads of kind of vibes of Inside Out, which I absolutely loved. It's definitely kind of up there for one of my favourite kind of Pixar films. It's definitely kind of made me kind of bubble like a little girl. Soul didn't quite, like, I was on the cusp a couple of times, but like I didn't quite kind of cross that threshold into kind of sobbing like a little girl. But Soul is so it's obviously very existential, but the whole kind of film focuses on Jamie Foxx's character, who is a jazz musician, gets his kind of big break after all these years, and falls in a manhole cover and effectively ends up in having ends up dying, and his soul's kind of like off to the afterlife kind of thing. So he then ends up kind of breaking away and ending up in the kind of place where souls are effectively first created, and they're essentially kind of slapped with all the like the feelings and what have you. And he's teamed up with Soul 22, which is voiced by Tina Fey, which again raises points for me like straight away. Tina Fey in this one, and Amy Poehler in this, I thought, and Inside Out, I thought was actually like a nice wee kind of link, because obviously they're actually very kind of friendly, the pair of them. They're into my kind of favourite kind of sitcoms, Parks and Rec and kind of 30 Rock, respectively. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, it's just a really kind of sweet, beautiful film. Like, if you go back to Toy Story, and that's not to say that Toy Story looks like shite now, because it doesn't. Like, it still holds up 20 odd years after it was made, almost like 25 years, I think it was, because it was 95 thereabouts. So, but if you kind of look from Toy Story up till now, even Cars, which I didn't kind of rate, like the animation is like superb, and it's like you can see this kind of like the evolution from there to now, and just some of the stuff you're looking at, you're just like, are you sure that isn't real? Like, is that kind of almost that uncanny valley, like teetering on the edge kind of thing. But yeah. It's what you come to expect from Pixar. It's a beautiful film. It's fantastically animated, very kind of well voice acted. Some great kind of voice cameos as well. Like if you pick them up, unlike Yvonne, who didn't. She's over there in the corner, like just kind of getting annoyed at me. So yeah, fifth film, because it kind of snuck in at the end, I'm gonna say so. Fourth film of the year. Is a joint one. No, it's not. Fourth film of the year was 1917. One of the first films I saw at the start of the year. I think technically it came out in the States in 2019, but for us we got it in 2020. The very kind of start kind of thing. War film that is directed by Sam Mendes, so plus straight out the kind of gate. But it's kind of given, I think for the most part, it makes it look like the entire film's done in a single take. There's definitely kind of portions where you can tell where there's been cutting, because obviously there's like a transition between day and night, for example. There's definitely, like, there's no middle ground. There's definitely going to be a cut there. But if there is any other cuts in the film, it's so insanely seamless that it's very kind of hard to tell. But again, absolutely kind of stunning kind of film. Obviously one of the most horrific kind of times in our history. Although saying that, 2020 happened as well, but again, not only is it like a technical kind of like marvel in terms of like the cinematography, the fact that, as I say, it looks like it's done in a single take. You got two fantastic kind of central performances, and a couple of kind of, again, fairly kind of high profile cameos, but I like the fact that it focuses on the two guys who are essentially set on this kind of mission to go and warn this kind of platoon as to an impending ambush, effectively. Like, if they go and kind of like attack somewhere, they're basically going to get slaughtered, and these two guys are basically kind of sent on this kind of effectively suicide mission. Like, it is like all the odds stacked against them, what have you, to go and kind of get this message across kind of thing. But there's points in the film where you're just like, how the hell did they do that? Like, obviously a lot of kind of, utilize CG and stuff. But like I think the best thing about like a film like this is no being able to tell when the CG's been kind of used and what have you. So and it is tense as all bollocks. Oh my god! Like if you're not kind of sitting there on the edge of your seat the entire film, then you're doing it wrong. Like you're just simply kind of doing it wrong on your side of things. So yeah, 1917, absolutely kind of fantastic. Absolutely kind of loved that. So yeah, moving on. If I can read my notes kind of properly, I've written them, so it's potentially going to take a degree in hieroglyphics. But it is a joint. So my number 3 is a joint between Bill and Ted, Face the Music, and Scare Me. So first of all, Bill and Ted Face the Music, the third entry in the Bill and Ted kind of franchise. I only just watched Bogus Journey recently. That was a weird fucking film. But the first one, so wholesome, like it's almost quintessentially kind of 90s. Or just, I think actually, sorry, on the cusp of the 80s. It's like, it's just on the way. It was 89 if I remember rightly. And first one is just like, it's just a fun film. Like, you're not sitting there going, where's the, I'm gonna like point to all the plot holes and paradoxical things when it comes to trying to time travel. Bill and Ted's one of these ones that kind of doesn't give a fuck, at least the first one. Just like, yeah, we're just gonna pluck Genghis Khan out of his timeline and like take him to the future and like get him to run around the mall and what have you, and there's going to be no consequences. But the third one is, everybody said, I'm not the only person to obviously kind of use this line, but but everybody's effectively said it is this kind of very kind of wholesome, feel good kind of film, especially in the year that we've all kind of had. And it was one of the only films I managed to actually catch in the cinema after the temporary lift of the lockdown. So I've seen 3 films. I saw Tenet, I saw Bill and Ted, and I saw Akira in 4K, which was mwah. But yeah, Bill and Ted, just this lovely kind of film. Keanu Reeves is just the guy, just kind of hard not to kind of love that man. Genuinely, I think he's for all intents and purposes and reports and what have you, he's apparently one of the nicest people on the planet, which you're sitting there going, yeah, I could kind of see that. So yeah, Keanu Reeves is brilliant. I want to say, I'm going to say Alex Winter. Alex Winter sounds right to me, so I'm going to say Alex Winter as well. Reprises his role. And again, as I say, it was just this lovely kind of film. The 2 lasses that got playing, like the daughters, fantastic. Samara Weaving being one of them from Ready or Not fame, and she was also in The Babysitter. If you've seen any of the films, you know she's probably kind of one to watch. But again, they were pitch perfect. It was almost like seeing 2 female cloned versions of their dads. Like, it was like really, really cool. But yeah, like I really enjoyed it. The second kind of one for 3 is Scare Me. Now, Scare Me was one of the films I watched during my 31 Days of Horror, which I very much enjoyed because of how clever it was. So if you kind of watched any of the 31 Days of Horror stuff that I kind of done, that was definitely one of the videos I actually did kind of do for 31 Days of Horror. And the thing I really liked about it is effectively it's 2 people in a room telling scary stories. Now, usually that would kind of essentially set up like an anthology kind of piece, whereby, you know, they'd kind of flash to the kind of story. And there was one anthology I watched, the Mortuary Collection or some, had Clancy Brown in it. It was also quite enjoyable, but this was something kind of completely unique. So it stars Ava Cash, so the lass that plays Stormfront in season 2 of The Boys. But yeah, so basically it's 2 writers, effectively with writer's block, in a cabin, power cut happens, and they're telling scary stories. Now, sounds like it potentially could be quite boring, but the beauty of this kind of film comes from the fact that when they're telling the scary stories, there's kind of sound effects, and there's bits where the kind of lights kind of go down, there's like musical numbers. It's just this kind of insanely clever film, and I don't really kind of want to kind of say too much about it. I genuinely, if you got Shudder on Prime, wholeheartedly recommend you kind of sit and watch it. I sat there the entire film with this huge, ridiculous grin on my face because I was just loving every second. It was a horror film, yeah, sure, but like at the same time, I wasn't overly scared. I was insanely entertained. So yeah, very much enjoyed Scare Me this year as well. So moving on, my number 2 spot at the moment is The Invisible Man. Remake of the 30s, and technically I would say Hollow Man was maybe a remake as well, because it is owned by Universal and what have you, and it's definitely like a take on that kind of like that whole mythology kind of thing. But the Invisible Man this year, again, one of the only films I managed to see in the cinema at the start of the year when everything was like not as shitey as it is now. But it stars Elizabeth Moss, Moss, same letter as the start of your name mark and the one that you keep repeating every 4 seconds. So Elizabeth Moss in effectively the lead role, and she's effectively in an abusive relationship. Effectively, it's implied that her ex has kind of like killed himself, but it turns out that he may have kind of invented like the technology to become invisible. So what you effectively get is a psychological thriller where, like, for a lot of the kind of film, you didn't actually kind of know whether or not she's kind of crazy or not, which I actually thought was kind of really well done. It's directed by Lee Wanell, the guy that co-wrote and starred in Saw. Like, he's Adam in the first Saw film, so he's the one kind of chained opposite Carrie Elwes in the old bit kind of ever so dank bathroom, or as I like to call it, the bathroom's pretty much in Nidri. But yeah, so he directs it, and this is the second thing he's directed, because the first thing he's directed is the absolutely fantastic Upgrade. So if you haven't seen Upgrade, I'm pretty sure it's on Netflix, but again, he's starting to kind of come into his own as to being a director. He's kind of written a lot, and he's kind of cameoed in a lot of kind of films and what have you, but just had a brain freeze. But yeah, Upgrade first film, Invisible Man second, and he's effectively revitalized the whole Universal Monsters, because as you kind of probably remember, The Mummy came out, I can't remember when, maybe was it 2018, 2017? Whatever year it came out, it was a piece of shit anyway, with Tom Cruise in it, and then, but like, it was one of these ones where they were trying to start their MCU, and of course it kind of went to shit. It wasn't good at all. And so I think what they've maybe kind of done there is like, right, screw it, we'll pull the plug, and we'll just kind of we'll try and kind of go like back to basics. So the first thing they done is slap it with an R rating, or 15 over here, which like it definitely kind of earns. Like, there's a lot of kind of grimness in the actual kind of film, which I thought was absolutely kind of brilliant, because it's one of these things, there's nothing worse than watching a horror whereby it can be watered in for like a 12A audience, and you're just like, just not. So like they ramped this up, and it's very kind of, it's very tense, it's very kind of unsettling, so kind of well done. I'm not going to say too much, because if you haven't seen it, like, I wholeheartedly recommend it as well. But yeah, Invisible Man, my number 2 for the year. There's a couple of honourable mentions in terms of kind of films I saw this year as well. Again, these are potentially came out in 2019 in the US, but they came out in like 2020 here, so that's fine. So Jojo Rabbit, absolutely kind of fantastic film. Obviously very grim subject matter, but Taika Waititi kind of like nails both the direction and the very caricatured version of Hitler, which is a sentence I never thought I'd end up kind of saying. Onward, Pixar's one for the start of the year, which again we got, I think, I want to say in February or March maybe. It was somewhere thereabouts. I very much enjoyed that as well. And Little Women, which I don't think I'd like, but I gave it a lot. I gave it my time because Greta Gerwig directed Lady Bird, and I loved Lady Bird, so I was like, you know what, stuff it, I'm going to go and see it. Had a fantastic kind of cast. Very kind of wholesome film as well. Like, it's so odd these days to kind of see a film whereby everything is just 100% wholesome, and it's no just like, you know, I think it was there's a couple of points in that film I was waiting for something kind of horrific to happen, but it didn't quite kind of happen. I thought that was actually like quite nice. I was like, oh, isn't that lovely? So yeah, that made me kind of all warm and fuzzy. But yeah. And the other one I was going to mention, Birds of Prey, which again I think I saw this year. Who the hell knows anymore? But I'm pretty sure saw at the start of the year. So it's the follow up to Suicide Squad. I mean, who the fuck knows anymore? Like, the way they've kind of the DCEU have done their kind of stuff. It's all over the show. They're slowly but surely finding their footing. With the one character, as much as I was very kind of apprehensive at first, I was like, maybe no. that's been nailed as Margot Robbie's version of Harley Quinn, if I can remember how to speak English. And she absolutely kind of knocks it in the park, and she's absolutely fantastic in this. Just a like fun time. R rating kind of like, so again, they're leaning more towards the higher rating in the DC kind of films, because it's always been one of these things where the DC kind of comics tend to be a lot darker. Some of the best kind of Batman stories, like he's dealing with kind of horrible serial killers and what have you kind of thing. That's not to say that there isn't any room for any kind of like lighter stuff, but for the most part, Batman is this kind of dark kind of character. So anything in his, effectively his kind of almost like radar should be the same. So it was always really kind of weird that Warner were trying to kind of get the 12A, but again, I think what it was is they were just like, ooh, Marvel's making all this money and all their films are 12A, and let's kind of follow that kind of suit. And it obviously didn't work, but it's good to see that they're finally finding their footing with films like Birds of Prey, Shazam. Very much enjoyed Aquaman as well. The Suicide Squad is looking like it will be absolutely kind of fantastic with James Gunn at the helm and the ridiculous kind of cast of characters in that kind of film. So it's good to see finally they're actually kind of they're getting there. And I think that really kind of deals with my honourable mentions. There's probably a lot more. It's not as if I didn't watch any films this year. It's pretty much all I've done. But my number one spot went to Parasite. Mainly because, and again, I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of this, but everything that Bong Joon-ho has done, pretty sure I got that right, I have absolutely loved. The only one I've not seen up to date is Okja or Okja or whatever the heck it's called, the one that's on Netflix. Haven't got around to yet, but I will. But Memories of Murder, the host, mother, no, that mother, like the other mother, Snowpiercer, everything that he has done that I've actually kind of sat through, I have absolutely loved. So I went into Parasite no knowing an awful lot about it, didn't care that I didn't know a lot about it. I just went in and gone, I'm gonna see what this is all about, and I was absolutely blown away. Like the Oscar buzz that he managed to kind of like garner, the amount of awards that they got for that film, wholeheartedly deserved. Again, I'm not going to say too much about the film because I think the less you know, the better. But just it's probably not going to be what you think it's going to be if you haven't actually kind of seen it. But I hope, again, as much as I've recommended everything else, I wholeheartedly recommend Parasite. It's unless like a film comes on in the next 20 minutes or whatever, it's been my film of the year. So again, very much enjoyed. So yeah, that was my top 5 films of the year. Again, I've definitely kind of watched a lot more. Whether or not they were for this year or no is notwithstanding. Just to kind of clarify, I did actually kind of watch a 2019 film very recently, which I wanted to kind of mention just now, which was Escape Room. Escape Room came out in 2019, which I'm pretty sure came out to fairly kind of like critical panning. Like it was essentially kind of like torn a new one. And I watched it the other night and I very much enjoyed it. So if you haven't managed to catch Escape Room, same deal as before. They go in knowing very little. I mean, it's pretty much in the title what you're kind of effectively in for. But very kind of interesting, engaging kind of film. Set pieces some of them are fucking absolutely kind of like jaw-droppingly cool. There's a bar bit. I'm not going to say anything else other than that, but I was just like, this looks awesome kind of thing. And it made me a wee bit kind of sad because for the past couple of years, prior to obviously this shit, I engaged in an escape room with a couple of kind of guys who work or our gaming group kind of thing. So yeah, that was a wee bit kind of bittersweet almost that I didn't kind of get a chance to kind of sit through that as well. So yeah, so Escape Room, nice to be kind of surprised, although technically came out in 2019. So I'll move on just now to my... I'm going to talk about my games this year because whereby I did kind of buy some brand new games. It's probably going to be a lot quicker that I talk about the games before I kind of start kind of waffling on about anything else on my side as well. So game wise, brand new games I bought this year were Resident Evil 3, Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and Cyberpunk 2077. Yes, I bought brand new. shut up. It is what it is. Probably my most disappointing game of the year was Resident Evil 3. Now, that's not to say it was a shite game, but I thought with the Resident Evil 2 remake, it was it was absolutely knocked out of the park. They definitely had the kind of scope to make this kind of really good, or at least add some downloadable content after the fact, and they seemed to kind of drop the ball a wee bit on this one, which was a wee bit kind of sad because the core gameplay is really kind of interesting. The Nemesis set pieces are really cool, but it was pretty damn short. And I don't know if there is branching storylines. I've only kind of played through it the once, but I was a wee bit kind of disappointed with Resident Evil 3, unfortunately. Next one in the camp, Cyberpunk 2077 is a teeny bit disappointing. I've only kind of played a wee portion of it just now, as I'm sure you probably kind of know the reason why. But at the same time, CD Projekt Red get a wee bit of grace with me, considering how fantastic The Witcher 3 is. Fair enough, they're up to a little bit of kind of scrutiny at the moment, but at the same time, I'm just kind of like, you know what? That's fine. Like, we'll let it slide, kind of thing. I mean, hopefully, like they didn't kind of keep up with the practices, but in terms of the actual kind of game launch and the fact that it was kind of broken, I could kind of see where they were coming from with the fact that they kind of dropped it, because like you guarantee if they'd pushed it back again, you would have ended up with the same arseholes effectively going, I took time off work and now I can't play it, me, and moan, huff, whinge, whinge. But through the so I've done one side quest just now, and I think I'm just I've done a couple of side quests and I've done a couple of the kind of main storyline missions. The last side quest I've done was to do with sentient cars, basically kind of gone haywire. Now, it would have been really kind of simple in that kind of quest to essentially kind of make it really kind of generic and just have like you going along and going, oh, there's car number 1, oh, it's attacked me, right, okay, I'll take it down and what have you, and just have that rinse and repeat. There's like 7 cars you need to find, but each of the kind of encounters, each of the 7 encounters are like wholly different, and again, it just goes to kind of like show that underneath the shite, it's CD Projekt Red at their kind of best, because one of the best things about the kind of Witcher, I avoided the Gwent campaigns. I've still no finished all the downloadable content, but it's so diverse in terms of the kind of quests. It's not just a fetch quest. There's so much lore to the stuff. Like if you go on a kind of like a contract and kind of go and kill a monster in The Witcher 3, there's a whole thing behind it. Like there's separate story elements and what have you. And again, there's a whole bunch of prep. You then just kind of go in swords blazing. So there is, like, when I played that particular quest, I could start to see the CD Projekt Red that I know and effectively love start to shine through. So I'm going to keep with it. The patches that they've kind of put in the moment have managed to actually kind of get it kind of working to a point where I can actually play it. It hasn't crashed since I kind of played it, and I'm playing it on the Xbox Series X there as well. So a little bit disappointing, but I know that there's a good game in there, so I'm gonna stick with it. Probably potentially like number 2, but joint number 1 almost is Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us Part 2. I'm going to talk about Ghost of Tsushima first. I've not finished it, but it's your general kind of open world samurai game kind of thing, and it's absolutely fantastic. Or at least what I've kind of played so far, I've absolutely loved. I've loved the kind of fact that I am effectively a samurai, and I go about like slicing people up the bit. One of my favourite things about it is the random encounters where you do a standoff, and like it's like one of these old kind of samurai movies where you're kind of holding on to your sword, and the other kind of guys come up to you, and like you have to kind of time your first kill right, and then after that you can basically cut down everybody else in that kind of tiny group. Brilliant. The duels some of them are absolutely solid, or at least potentially the way I play it, they're absolutely solid. I'm getting there, but they're also insanely cool as well. It's like, again, something out of a samurai kind of film, which admittedly I haven't kind of watched a lot of, but like the immersive kind of like experience, the beautiful kind of landscape and what have you, the fact that like the map is kind of giant as always. Open world fatigue did kind of set in a little bit for me for a bit, but I think it's back with a bit of vengeance, and I'm quite happy to actually kind of traverse. And it's a game I will definitely kind of finish if I ever get my finger out. But yeah, and then my kind of number one game of 2020, potentially controversially so, is The Last of Us Part 2. I absolutely loved Last of Us Part 2, start to finish, with all the kind of things that everybody was moaning about and whinging about, like the thing that happens and that other thing that happens. Because again, for the people that haven't kind of sat through and kind of played it start to finish, I don't want to kind of say too much, but the one thing that everybody was like moaning about, and it was rampant through the actual kind of like the reviews and everything, couldn't get any less of a fuck. I actually thought it was a very kind of well told story. It was absolutely kind of beautiful in terms of like gameplay, the way it kind of looked, the way it played. I love the fact that like you didn't have to really kind of stealth this. There was points where it was probably better to stealth your way through stuff, but there was also bits where you could effectively just go in guns blazing, take out everybody, and make as much noise as you possibly wanted. And in that kind of regard as well. This is probably going to make me sound kind of fairly sick, but the gruesome kind of death animations and stuff like that, and like the attention to detail in the film in the game was absolutely kind of stupid. But it's the one game that I've like, apart from Resident Evil 3, that I've kind of like I put on, and like I was kind of like working through it kind of slowly because I didn't want to kind of smash. A lot of people I think also complained about the length of the game as well. They can get right in the bin. I actually kind of didn't mind the fact it was long, because it's one of these games where I'm playing, I'm just like, I really didn't want this to end. But yeah, just a tiny little flourishes. Like there's a whole thing where it's like vertigo plays a kind of part in it, and effectively when the character's kind of up high and they kind of look down, like the screen starts to kind of wobble and kind of get a wee bit kind of like almost like it's vertigo. And I actually thought like that is that there tiny wee thing, but the attention to detail is stupid. It's a game I will go back and revisit. I absolutely loved the first one. I absolutely loved the second one. I actually thought it was a worthy successor, and balls to anybody that said otherwise. So, top game of the year, Last of Us Part 2. Come get me if you want to. Didn't care. Yeah, so moving on. Not that anybody's watching me just now, but I'm gonna keep talking anyway, because this is kind of for me. So fuck it, I'm just gonna keep talking. So TV I watched this year. So I'll talk about the 2020 kind of stuff that I kind of managed to kind of get through, which, looking at my little list here, is probably not as much as I would have thought, but like I got through a bit. Like a lot of them are effectively, yeah, I think most of them are streaming based. But anyway, so I'm not going to do these in any kind of order, like top 5 or what have you kind of thing. I'm just going to go through it and talk about how much what I kind of enjoyed about the ones that I watched. So first on my list, Solar Opposites, which is the follow up. It's from the brain of kind of Justin Roiland, so obviously Rick and Morty fame. But Solar Opposite, and don't ask me how I managed to kind of watch it. That is a secret that will stay with me to my grave. But it is Rick and Morty dark enough. Like you watch Rick and Morty, something you're sitting watching going, holy fuck, that was grim. Solar Opposites is just completely 100% off the leash. There is absolutely zero fucks given in this show, and I was laughing my ass off the whole time. It is probably no for everybody. I'm just going to say that outright. Even if you're a fan of Rick and Morty, I think if you get past the first episode and continue to watch, I think you will actually enjoy it. A couple of the guys I kind of I know who watched it as well. Excuse me. Pretty much weren't like sold on it at first, but then I said to them, I was like, guys, get a bash, trust me, kind of thing. And so they did, and they stuck with it, and they very much enjoyed it. And I thought it was absolutely, as I say, absolutely hilarious. Points had me kind of like on the flare. It's, as I say, it's Rick and Morty dialed up to kind of 90. I was going to use a Spinal Tap 11 joke, but no, it's dialed up to 90. It's just there's so much more profanity. It's a lot grimmer. And again, there's absolutely zero fucks given. So again, no for everybody, but if you like the Royland humour, then I suggest giving that a bash if you can get a hold of it. Lock and Key is on my list as well. So Lock and Key is the adaptation of the graphic novel. I enjoyed what I watched. However, I think, and this is is the almost the MO of every Netflix kind of series, which I kind of found out reason for recently, and I'll get to that in a second. But it seemed like it was in a massive, massive hurry. So I absolutely loved the graphic novels. They were lent to me initially by a guy called Mark, who I've mentioned in videos before. Other Mark, Mr. D, as I like to kind of call him. Absolutely loved the graphic novel. Like, the artwork was absolutely brilliant. An engaging storyline, kind of told over 6 graphic novels. So probably talking 36 issues, give or take. And again, it's very kind of it's very well paced. It didn't kind of feel kind of rushed or whatever. And the point of the kind of graphic novels is almost each entry in the graphic novel series focuses on a particular key. So the whole thing with like Lock and Key is there is a house called Key House, and the Locke family here. See what they've done there. They kind of move in after like a personal tragedy kind of thing, and they start finding these keys all around the place. But each of the kind of keys either basically is kind of magic, and it'll do like magical things. So for example, there's the ghost key has got like a little skull in it. There's a particular door in the house. They open that kind of door, and then when they go through that door, they turn into a ghost. That's effectively how it is, kind of thing. So, but as I say, it's the graphic novel. Despite the fact that different keys kind of feature, there is like almost like an inherent kind of focus on that particular key. And I felt like the series just kind of was like in a hurry to introduce as many keys as it possibly could, and kind of like gloss over a lot of the story, like elements that kind of happen like way later in the graphic novels were like kind of getting like slapped into kind of this first season. So I was a wee bit kind of like, why are you guys in such a hurry? And then I kind of found out that apparently it's a standard thing with Netflix to basically kind of go through like series really quickly, because like their thinking is if they can get subscribers, they'll go for that. So that's why a lot of kind of Netflix series only get 3 seasons. So yeah, that's why kind of Lock and Key seems to be in a hurry. I did enjoy it. I will watch the second series when it does eventually come on, if it gets kind of filmed. Like due to kind of everything, I think stuff is slowly but surely starting to film. But like, I will watch the second series. Star Trek Picard, I very much enjoyed. I think I'm almost in the minority. Like, I was talking to a few of my friends who are Star Trek fans as well, who were enjoying it, but then I think it started to get a wee bit kind of nippy for them as well. So yeah, I think by the end of it, I don't think they liked it as much as I did, but like I enjoyed it start to finish. I love the nostalgia kind of. I love being kind of slapped in the face with the nostalgia fish. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Umbrella Academy season 2, way better than season 1. Started to kind of like embrace a lot of the quirkiness that I love about the graphic novel. It was a very surprising graphic novel when I kind of first picked up, because it was written by Gerard Way, and at the time I was like, My Chemical Romance. No, I just didn't give a fuck. I actually listened to them, and people watching this video are probably going, oh god, really? Mark's an emo goth guy, but I'm no, like, I didn't have the face for the makeup. But yeah, very, very surprised the first time I kind of read Umbrella Academy. I was a bit disappointed with the first season, because obviously this is a thing where like there isn't like an unlimited budget. They managed to do quite a bit, I think, with the first season, but again, a lot of it was kind of like held back, like due to that, due to not being able to kind of like shoot the kids like first fighting Eiffel Tower, which happens in the first issue, and like I was like, oh boo-hoo, it might have worked better as an animation, but anyway, it is what it is. Second season was way better. Characters were way better. There was a lot of the more of the quirkiness, and I very much enjoyed that. I've noticed that I'm very handsy when I'm talking, because I'm noticed myself on the big screen, which is really kind of weird. But yeah, sorry about that. Distracting myself. The Outsider was Stephen King adaptation, one of the first TV shows to actually kind of come out this year. Absolutely fantastic and engaging, and interesting. Had a fantastic cast: Ben Mendelsohn, Jason Bateman. I'm not going to say a lot about it. It's a Stephen King adaptation, so it's Stephen Kingy, but it's very intriguing. I think it didn't get a second series, but this tells a complete story, so don't worry about that. There's no there's no real room for like a second series, which I'm absolutely kind of fine with. It tells a story which is really kind of good. And I got it for Christmas as well, so I'll probably kind of rewatch that at some point as well. And Mandalorian season 2, I mean, what's to say about that? Absolutely loved the first season. Star Wars is good again. Loved the second series as well. I think a lot of people kind of had. I think there was some kind of moaning about the finale, which I'll obviously not say anything about because I'm not that kind of guy. I had no issues with it at all, aside for the fact that Twitter fucking spoiled it for me. But I guess that was my own fault for going on to Twitter. But the one thing I always keep coming back to is the production values on it. The acting talent they've got on board. The production values are ridiculous because it's like you're watching 45-minute Star Wars films every kind of week. It's just, what? How the hell is that? That's not what? Like, you just kind of look at it and it looks absolutely kind of fantastic. But Disney being Disney can obviously kind of throw as much money at it as they possibly can. So yeah. So yeah, that's TV. Comics. So I'll have a quick kind of talk about comics, and then I'll talk about what I'm looking forward to in 2021, and I'll probably end up wrapping it. Might actually just kind of make it to midnight. Like no, as it says, not that anybody's watching, which makes me sad, but at the same time, I'm doing this for me. I wanted to do something creative. I'm going to pop this up on YouTube anyway, so if people want to watch it after the fact, then I'm happy for them to kind of do that as well. If they've got an hour to kill when they're dealing with their hangovers tomorrow. But yeah, so comics. So I kind of, I'm really bad for letting comics build up and build up and build up and not reading them. So like I've actually been kind of working through a few on my side of things, but what I'll do is I'll talk about if I can, a Marvel run and a DC run that I'm kind of currently reading that I'm pretty sure came out in 2020, but yeah. So first of all, the Marvel side of things. So at the moment, there's two prominent comic book writers that I am all about in terms of the big kind of guys, so DC and Marvel, despite the fact these guys are both kind of done indie stuff. But so the two guys are Tom King, who's done stuff for Marvel and for DC, and Donny Cates, who I don't know if he's dabbled in DC yet, but he's definitely dabbled in Marvel, and he's smashed it in the kind of park. I've also started to kind of read a couple of his indie titles as well. Absolutely kind of fantastic writer. So I've not read anywhere near as much Tom King as I have this year, although I'm pretty sure I did actually manage to read the Mr. Miracle graphic novel, which was just absolutely kind of fantastic. But Donny Cates run currently on Thor. So Donny Cates has been kind of making a name. He's done a run on Guardians of the Galaxy. He's done a run on Silver Surfer. And he's currently kind of writing Venom and Thor, which again, like the little bit kind of worry is when a writer's doing that much that is going to get oversaturated and potentially a little bit stale. But the man knows what he's like doing. At no point have I read any stuff and went, oh, maybe no kind of thing. So I think one of the first things I kind of read by him, although I might have kind of read stuff before and no realised, but was a graphic novel called Thanos Wins, which is exactly what it sounds like on the tin. It features Thanos in the future, effectively having beaten everyone, and him getting his kind of younger self into the kind of like future realm to essentially kind of help him continue to court death. So one of the things that's obviously not touched upon in the MCU is that Thanos is in love with the personification of death, who is represented by a lady. The reason he kind of does the whole kind of Infinity Gauntlet storyline is he's just trying to impress death. So we could totally see why they didn't kind of go with that in the kind of MCU. A little bit out there. Although I did think for a brief moment in Infinity War, where they go to Vormir and there's the floating skull thing. I was like, no, no fucking way. And they didn't, like, it was Red Skull. But, like, at the same time, I think it was also like a, wink, wink. So, yeah, so in Thanos Wins, he's, like, basically trying to get, like, the affections of death back. And it's just this absolutely kind of, like, fantastically over-the-top thing. You've got a new version of Ghost Rider, who was a Herald of Galactus and what have you. And it's an insane Frank Castle, which is just absolutely kind of perfect. So currently he's doing a run on Thor. There's one arc completely done, and then there's a second arc which I'm midway into, which so far I'm absolutely loving. But the first arc focuses on Thor effectively now being the king of Asgard. Shit starts to kind of go like mental in the galaxy, as you can imagine, and he is recruited again by like the big man in the pink skirt, Galactus, Devourer of Worlds, as his herald to help him defeat something called the Black Winter, and it's just like Thor having like way more power than he should do, giving Galactus a smackdown whenever he's kind of like taking the piss and everything. Again, absolutely kind of brilliant. But where it's starting to shine is the second arc called Prey. Prey, so for anybody that kind of knows anything about the comics, at one point during, I want to say the 90s, and like please forgive me if I'm wrong, but Thor was essentially kind of, he was essentially kind of almost exiled, and kind of like he was coexisting with a guy called Donald Blake, which I think a lot of the kind of the storyline to the first Thor movie is almost kind of ripped, without the only difference being that he isn't actually kind of swapping places with Donald Blake. They even make a reference, but he's obviously depowered and what have you. But the whole thing with Donald Blake is he was a doctor, and every time he knocked his cane on the ground, he effectively turned back into Thor. Now in this arc, it's basically kind of explained that every time like Thor appeared, Donald Blake would end up in this idyllic kind of suburb thing, and it's beautiful. But then it turns out in the first issue that when, because Thor kind of needs to kind of swap places, there's a whole thing going on, which again I'll not go too much into. But when he swap places, it turns out that the entire idyllic, beautiful suburb that Donald Blake has been kind of living in has been absolutely kind of laid waste to. And it's because Donald Blake has effectively went a wee bit crazy, which I thought, so only 2 issues into the arc so far, but I'm like, yes. So Donna Cates' run on Thor, absolutely loving, and the current Batman run. So I'm going to feel really bad for knowing the bloke's kind of name. I think it's James Tynion the Fourth or something, like, I think it says Tynion Ivy on the cover. Please forgive me if I'm wrong. But current run on Batman is just kind of coming off Tom King's run on Batman, which again was absolutely kind of fantastic. But it's effectively harkens back to 4 of the kind of main like the main villains, effectively doing a pact with this like super like intelligent kind of criminal kind of thing, who essentially kind of puts them aside and says, look, how would you kind of go ahead and like do your perfect crime kind of thing, and that kind of goes a bit pear-shaped, and it ends up that kind of Batman is kind of dealing with the aftermath years later kind of thing. So that's the current kind of one just now, and again absolutely fantastic. Leads into Joker War, which I've only kind of started reading, but again, Joker is usually a character kind of worth reading about. I read The Three Jokers as well by Jeff Johns, and very much enjoyed that as well. But yeah, very little in the way indie kind of ones this year, so I'm hopefully going to rectify that. But yeah, so comic runs, that's me. So with 6 whole minutes to go till 2021, I'm going to quickly rattle through the things I'm looking forward to in 2021 if we ever actually get there. I'm expecting a meter to hit in about 3 minutes time, but it is what it is. So notes wise, so films I'm looking forward to, but most of these have been pushed back to this year, but it is what it is. A couple of horror films to start off with. So Candyman is probably actually the film I'm looking forward to most in this entire list, but Candyman is the I absolutely so I only kind of watched the original fairly recently, so it was only something I kind of came to enjoy on a high level this year. But I was sad that it was kind of pushed back. But with Jordan Peele directing, not directing, apologies, he is writing and kind of producing, and it's been directed by a lady by the name of Nia DaCosta. I hope I've pronounced that right. But the film looks absolutely fantastic. It looks like it is a straight up sequel to the first one, or as I like to call it, a requel. So it's a rebooted sequel, so it pretty much kind of ignores Candyman 2 and 3. There was a 2 and 3, which I think were shite, but yeah. Halloween Kills, I actually quite liked the 2018 one. I thought it was a nice wee kind of like homage, another requel. Seems to be the order of the day these days. Quiet Place 2, I wasn't 100% that it needed a sequel. I thought the way the first one ended was fine, but it made money, so obviously the franchise. This was actually the last film I actually booked before lockdown, and I ended up getting my money back because they closed the cinema down. I found out that Edgar Wright is actually going to direct a psychological horror next year called Last Night in Soho. It's Edgar Wright. Like I'm not going to say anything else about that. It's Edgar Wright. He's fucking directing it. That's fine. We're getting Dune. Never read the book. Never seen the original film. But this adaptation looks absolutely phenomenal. It looks grand and epic and proper hard sci-fi. So it's probably not going to be for everybody. But it's directed by Denis Villeneuve, which is again another kind of director that will make me get up and actually enjoy. The one thing I'm a little bit worried about is the whole HBO Max, whereby they're essentially co-streaming stuff in the States, because Dune is one I want to see in IMAX. There's no middle ground. I want to see that on as big a screen as possible, so I hope that doesn't get pushed back. Bond, and then the MCU films, because I'm suffering with a wee bit of MCU withdrawal. So Black Widow and Spidey, because the more they talk about Spidey, I'm almost apprehensive. I don't know if it's going to be one of these ones where it turns out to be a bit shite because of how oversaturated it's seeming to get. But apparently Alfred Molina's coming back, Jamie Foxx is coming back. There's apparently going to be rumoured roles for Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. It looks like they're doing a live action Spider-Verse, which, as it says, could either be a blessing or it could turn to shit. So I really hope it doesn't turn to shit. But with the way the MCU has been kind of dealing with its properties, I highly doubt that on that side of things. Honourable mentions, Venom 2, I quite like the first one, but I found it today that the second one's been directed by Andy Serkis. Shut up and take my money. The Ghostbusters sequel, I quite liked the 2016 one, despite what I was initially kind of led to believe it looked like shite. But again, it's another requel. It's kind of essentially ignoring that 2016 one, which is a bit shite, but I'm kind of liking that idea as well. And Spiral as well looks like a very interesting kind of return to form for the Saw franchise. Now this is all dependent on when and all this shit comes out, because, you know, as much as 2021 is going to be like a brand new year and a potentially kind of reset, we're still going to be in a global pandemic, at least at the start of it, until everybody's kind of vaccinated and that like COVID gets itself to fuck. And finally TV. So I'm looking forward to Disenchantment season 3, and WandaVision is probably the one I'm looking forward to most. I didn't even have to wait that long for either of them because they both kick off in January. So WandaVision just looks absolutely fantastic. It just looks like the kind of weirdness that I was kind of really hoping it would do. It's effectively kind of like setting all these different kind of golden age TV kind of like portions, and it looks very kind of interesting. It looks really kind of weird, and I'm totally over it. As much as I'm looking forward to the Loki TV series and Winter Soldier, WandaVision is the one. As soon as I kind of heard about it and I started kind of reading a bit more about it, I was like, yes. And the trailer I have seen. I've only watched the teaser trailer, but I am all over that shit. So yeah, wrapping up with a minute to go. So yeah, that was my my Geek Waffle. Hopefully I didn't kind of talk too much shite. I'm going to load this up on YouTube. Obviously folks are too busy getting smashed and kind of dealing with their stuff. Would have loved to have a bit more viewers, but it's fine. I done it for me. I'm happy that I done it for me, kind of thing. I'm going to hopefully try and keep doing stuff like this for next year. I've enjoyed kind of doing the creative kind of videos that I've kind of done on my side of things. So yeah, so that's that. I'm going to wait until midnight so I can actually kind of officially tell 2020 to get right to fuck. So I'm just going to almost count down. Like, I didn't even have a clock in front of me or whatever, but I'm looking at my screen, just waiting for it to to do the zeros. Usually this is a point of year where you'd hear the fireworks in Edinburgh, but obviously that's not going to fucking happen this year. And there we go, midnight. Happy New Year to everybody watching. 2020, get right to fuck. Hope you enjoyed what I've kind of done. Hopefully I'll kind of do a wee bit more. But yeah, have yourself a very nice New Year. Get as smashed as you possibly can. Do your New Year's resolutions if that's what you want to kind of do. If that's your bag, then enjoy. But yeah, Happy New Year to all, and to all a good evening.